the next part of the homework was to make it so that the flicks actually stick around after we refresh the page. We're going to do that using local storage. That would be window.localStorage. But global variables are properties on the window object, window being the global object. So window.localStorage is also available as simply local storage, assuming that window itself is available in our context, which in the browser it generally is. So storing things in local storage is pretty darn easy. Local storage dot set item. Let's say set item, sure, name Davey, easy enough. And then local storage dot get item name. And local storage is scoped by the host and the protocol like HTTP, HTTPS. So other sites can't get to the local storage that you've saved on a different site. So you don't have to worry about that. To remove an item from local storage.remove item. And now get item name would be null. To clear it completely for the current site, local storage.clear. So let's store something other than a string. Let's try an object. Use our classic meals. Local storage, set item, tell it the name that we want to save it as. We'll save it as meals, and then give it the object that you want stored there, and that would be our variable meals. Let's do a local storage get item meals object. Guess what? You can only store strings in local storage. So anything else you have to convert to a string beforehand. And if you just let JavaScript convert an object to a string automatically, this is what it does. Object. Or object in whatever type of object it is, like object HTML div element. So we need a better way to serialize that data, to turn it into a string that we can store in local storage. Thankfully, there is an easy way to do that. We can save it as JSON. And JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation because it is a form of JavaScript Object Notation. Now, not all JavaScript Object Notation is valid JSON. JSON has some rules that our normal JavaScript object syntax doesn't have. For example, if we look at our flick here, wherever that is, this is a JavaScript object. And we know that we can leave the quotation marks off the keys, right? Not in JSON. You must quote them, and you in fact must use double quotes. Same with the value. If the value is a string as opposed to a number or something, it must be quoted. So we would have to say something like that if we wanted this to be valid JSON. So you must double quote both the keys and the values. But there's a really easy way to turn a regular JavaScript object into JSON automatically using JSON.stringify. So let's get our meals back here and say JSON.stringify meals. And we get a string of that object with everything double quoted. So valid JSON format. So let's save that. Meals string. And then use local storage. Set item meals and pass it meals string. And then get it back out of local storage. And there we go. We have our string back. Now it's still a string. It's not back to being an object. So we have to do the opposite of stringify. JSON stringify takes an object, turns it into a string. JSON.parse takes a string and turns it back into an object. So JSON parse local storage.getItem meals. Gives us back the actual object. So we can use that same trick to save our flicks in local storage and get them back when the page loads. So this is about the time that we're happy that we have this array, this .flicks, where we store them all. Because we can just stringify that. When do we need to do it? Well, any time that the array changes. So that's several times. So let's go ahead and make a method that's going to do that for us. I'll just call it save. Don't forget your comma. What's it going to do? It's going to call local storage dot set item. It's going to call it flicks. That's the key in local storage where I'm going to save this. Local storage is basically a big object, except we don't use object notation to get and set items. You can, but it doesn't work reliably. You're supposed to use set item and get item. A lot of times local storage dot whatever key will work, but it's not how you want to do it. Set item flicks, and the value we want to set it to would be JSON stringify this dot flicks the array. Cool. So we want that to happen anytime we make a change. So let's see. When we first add something, right? It gets pushed onto the array. So that happens down in handle submit. We unshift it onto the array. We can just at the very end save our changes. Or we could do it anytime after this. I'll just make it the last thing so we don't lose track of it. Okay, if I fave one, that changes our data, right? So I need to do it then. When I remove one, that changes the array. I need to do it then. So this dot save and remove flick, this dot save and fave flick. Move up, that changes it, but only if it wasn't already the top one. So we only need to save inside the if block. Move down just calls move up again. So as long as we save at the end of move up, we don't need to save with move down. It's redundant. Toggle editable, of course. We even have a comment here, save changes, where we update the array. And right after that, we should call this.save. When we first make it editable, nothing's changed yet, right? Only when we finish editing do we need to save it. Save on enter just calls toggle editable again, so that takes care of it. And that ought to do it. So let's try some stuff out. And let's just move bad boys 2 to the bottom. Let's fave the rock. And let's just replace bad boys with Pearl Harbor. Enter. Now, let's have a look at local storage get item flicks. Okay, it's an array looking structure. First we have Pearl Harbor, then we have the rock, and fave is true. And finally we have bad boys 2, fave is false. So it did it, and it did them in the right order. So that's good news. Now when we refresh the page, of course, they'll still be in local storage, but they won't be on the page anymore, right? Because we're never getting them out of local storage. They're still there. And by the way, there's a handy way to look at the data that's in local storage. In the application tab in your DevTools, there's a whole section on storage, including local storage and session storage and some other stuff. And you can see everything that you have stored. Also gives you an easy way to clear it out if you need to. So here we see I have flicks and meals. If I want to get rid of meals, I could say delete selected. You could clear it all here. You could refresh in case your DevTools are behind reality. Gives you a nice way to check. And again, you can only see the current site. You can't see other hosts. So we're storing them in local storage now, but we need a way to get them back out.